Welcome to Sage Audio. Today let's look at how to mix a song in 10 steps. But first, if you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Organize your session. For this video, I can't go into really specific details since it would take too much time to cover, but check out some of our other videos for how to mix specific instruments, using creative techniques to solve mix problems, and so on. Also, you don't have to mix the same way I do, but this is just a helpful general flow for mixing that I found works well more times than not. Now, before I begin to mix a song, I like to organize everything within my session. For example, I'll color code the tracks and arrange them according to what type of instrument they are. Then, I'll change the icons to corresponding instruments and change their outputs to buses. So, all of my instruments will go to an instrument bus, all of the drums will go to a drum bus, and so on, which I've also color-coded to match the instruments being sent to them. As far as mixing goes, I'll get some general levels, but these will probably change as the mix develops. Let's take a listen to the unprocessed signal so that we can hear what we'll be working on. Attenuate unwanted frequencies with EQ. The first insert that I'll use is almost always an EQ, with which I'll cut frequencies that I don't want and dip some ones that I want less of. You'll notice that I'll use high-pass filters, and I'll typically dip a little of the low mids to reduce their masking effect on higher, more clarifying frequencies. Also, if a signal doesn't need to be equalized, I'll just leave it alone, since there's no need to waste any CPU that could be used later on. Let's take a listen to how the EQ subtly clarifies the signal. If you're enjoying the video, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It's free and it helps us bring you more videos. Increase details with compression. Next, I'll be specific with which compressors I use on each signal, since they each sound different. For example, on the vocal, I'll use compression settings that capture all of the signal due to the soft knee and look ahead, and then bring it forward with some automatic makeup gain. Or, on the kick drum, I'll use an 1176 emulation with short attack and release to distort transients and then bring quieter details up by increasing the output. You don't need to stick to just downward compression either. On the snare and tambourine, I used an upward compressor to amplify the quieter, brighter aspects. Or, you might want to avoid compressing a signal altogether if its dynamics are controlled already. Now, what you choose depends on the signal that you're mixing, but I find this is a good point in the mix to control dynamics and to begin shaping the timbre of individual signals. Let's take a listen. Add character with saturation. Saturation adds harmonics and causes mild to moderate compression. When combined, this is a great way to give instruments distinct characters. For example, I'll use this tape plugin by Baby Audio on my vocal and increase the presence to give it a slight lo-fi crunch and some bright sound. I use the same plugin, but with varying settings on some of my keys and the snare for the same reason. Now, when I wanted a warmer and softer sound, I could use this warm tape emulation, like with the piano, or if I wanted to fill out the lows while increasing transients, I'd use a warm tube setting, like with my kick. So let's take a listen to how the distinct harmonics and the shaping caused by each saturator help the instruments find a distinct identity. Shape processing with EQ. I'm going to EQ again, but this time instead of just cutting frequencies, I'll amplify and attenuate where needed. Now, you could do this before your compression and your saturation, but I find that this setup gives you more control over what frequencies go into and what comes out of your processors. On a lot of the instruments in this mix, I boost the mids and the highs, but notice that I dip around 2.5 kHz. Now, this ensured that the instrument didn't compete too much with the vocal. Also, I reintroduced some high-pass filters, since some of the processors added unwanted low frequencies. Let's take a listen to how these EQs set us up well for things like temporal and creative processing. Introduce specialty processing. With my dynamics controlled and the general sound getting closer to how I want it to sound, I'll start focusing on specific instruments that I want to give a unique sound to. For example, on my violin, I'll use this Lifeline Expanse plugin by Excite Audio to first introduce some reverb, but then send it to the side image. Now this gives it a unique placement and it helps separate it from other key-like instruments. On the bass, I use the same plugin to emulate a cabinet speaker, as well as add a mild slapback, some digital distortion, and then ensure that the low end stayed mono. Now plugins like this make it a lot easier to craft a unique sound for a signal by offering multiple effects simultaneously and letting us tweak and rearrange. Let's take a listen to how these gave the affected instruments unique sounds. Start processing the buses. Next I'll process the buses, but first I'll use the pan pots on my channel strips to alter their positions in the mix. Maybe the piano and the keys can go a little to the left or the right, but I want to keep the vocal, the bass, kick, and the snare centered. Binaural panning also works really well on pads. Now on my vocal bus, I'll use some resonance reduction to dynamically attenuate aggressive frequencies. I'll do the same on my instrument bus, but then I'll sidechain the vocal bus to help reduce overlap between the two. On the drum bus, I'll use maximization and some subtle EQ to first make the drums more powerful and cohesive, and then to help separate it from the bass guitar. Let's take a listen to what our mix is sounding like now. If you're enjoying the channel, use the search box to watch more of our videos. Add temporal processing. From my buses, I'll use sends and parallel tracks to introduce delay and reverb. In this mix, I introduce plate reverb and tape delay on the vocal with an added compressor to help duck the delay, making the vocal's transients cut through. Then, I used room emulation to help thicken the drums. Lastly, I'll send all of my buses to a collective studio room emulation and ambient reverb to create a cohesive sound by giving them a shared space. Notice that all of the aux tracks faders are pretty low since I don't want these effects to overpower the mix. Let's take a listen to how temporal processing improves the mix. Add some creative elements. So at this point I have the mix pretty spectrally and dynamically balanced. Then I have the time-based effects, adding some dimension and life to the mix. I find this is a good time to find opportunities to add creative and unique processing, which I'll do with this Shaperbox plugin from Cable Guys. Now on the instrument bus, I introduced a filter that dips the high frequencies near the end of each bar. Then I used this panning module to oscillate the mid to high frequencies between the left and right channel, as well as added some modulating stereo expansion. Now on the bus, I triggered some soft clipping to the highs and then fluctuated the overall volume every eighth note. Things like this will help the mix stand out, and they're best saved for later in the mix when everything is already sounding balanced. Let's take a listen. Create a demo master. It isn't a good idea to send your mix off for mastering with any processing on the master output, but if you want to create a quick demo master, maybe show some friends or just to have, here's a quick chain I like to use. I'll first insert a mid-side EQ and attenuate lows on the side image. Now this helps keep the lows of the mix more mono, making it sound more focused. I'll then use this intelligent EQ to dynamically amplify and attenuate frequencies based on a predetermined algorithm that it's using. Then I'll brighten up the highs with this free air EQ before introducing some limiting. Now notice that I'm not using true peak limiting and instead introduced oversampling and a little look ahead. Let's take a listen to the end result with this demo chain enabled. If you have a mix that you need mastered, send it to us to receive a free mastered sample of it with the link in the description. Thank you so much for watching.